We are currently dwindling to the second half of year 7 of the Nintendo Switch, on top of the recent Nintendo Direct that happened 2 weeks ago. Talks and speculation of the next Nintendo system have been roaming for a while lately, and I figured diving back into that poll could make for a fun discussion, analysis, prediction, speculation type of video, more speculatory than anything else, but based on recent announcements and precedents on Nintendo and other companies' systems generations prior. So purely my own speculation, my own stance and opinion. The vast sum of it isn't based on what other people are saying and thinking. This is more based on what I feel and am thinking. Pure speculation, but even when I don't think we're seeing the considerably dwindled last of the Switch, we are closer to the end than the beginning of the Switch. So let's just jump into it. Release window. When I personally expect the next system to come. When is that, SMT? Tell us, please. In my follow-up discussion on the recent Direct, I mentioned 2 to 3 years roughly for how much longer the Switch is going to be the main system until Nintendo shifts gears to the next one. That roughly still feels like the case for me. I am leaning more towards 2 years though. Could subject to change, but the absolute earliest I can see Nintendo announce or tease us getting a new system or even it coming out, one of the two, the last third of 2024. Nintendo teasing their next system sometime next year I can visibly envision, but it both getting teased and coming out the year after, 2025, I think is the safe zone. I'll specify why 2025, discussing game-specific announcements much later on, but anywhere from late 2024 at the earliest to anywhere in 2025 is where I think Nintendo will both tease their next system as well as potentially release it. Though releasing in 2025 makes more sense, albeit it depends on what announcements they have in store for 2024. If Nintendo's pumping out a brand new 2D Mario game towards the end of this year, we still have a ways to go. I love 3D Mario more than 2D, even though I still do like 2D, but 2D Mario was always bigger than 3D Mario. Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury is, in my opinion anyways, an outrageously better game than New Super Mario Bros. U. But U Deluxe sold over 15 million, whereas 3D World sold 10 million. New Soup Wii sold triple the amount Mario Galaxy did, roughly the same as its DS counterpart as well. How much I like Mario legit does not matter. 2D Mario's power is insane beyond what most people believe, even when you could argue most other massive first-party system sellers are more fun by comparison. And with 2D Mario, they sell mad well, but they also sell mad well over time consistently. It's exactly like Mario Kart. So it's funny when analysts are going on and on about how it's like, Tears to Kingdom's the last big major game for the Switch, and Nintendo casually announces a new 2D Mario, which, don't get me wrong, TOTK's a banger game. 2D Mario is so much bigger. It is wildly more popular, wildly more powerful in pushing sales on itself, as well as systems and even over time. 2D Mario is bigger than Mario Kart. That's how humongous of a deal a new 2D Mario for Nintendo is, especially for as creative and fun Mario Wonder looks. In no world is 2D Mario, even the new Soup games that felt very samey, not one of the biggest deals Nintendo could make to push hardware for sales. So it feels pretty odd if Nintendo just drops a new 2D Mario and in less than a year they just move on to a different system. That doesn't seem logical or consistent with what Nintendo normally does, even financially. They very well could, that can always change, but even with past systems that were backwards compatible, that pattern hasn't changed. When Wonder comes out, I can definitely see it holding up the Switch throughout 2024 alongside other relatively major games that either just came out recently, like especially Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, Metroid Prime 1 Remaster, and games coming in the coming months like Pikmin 4, New WarioWare, Super Mario RPG HD, still Mario Kart 8 DLC, and still 2 other games with Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon's Remaster and this Untitled Peach game in 2024. In spite of that though, on the opposite end of the coin, which I'm bringing up again in a bit, Nintendo's still even now investing a lot into the Switch, while also in that same breath describing how Switch sales are slowing down. The Switch passed its peak back in 2021, basically, and last year fiscally it sold less, and 2023's fiscal year is even lower than that. So they already peaked a couple of years ago, and them acknowledging this does heavily imply and usually signal to gaming companies that the next system should be on the way reasonably soon whenever they can get it out. Nintendo knows they basically hit the saturation point the Switch could rise up to. They basically got the Switch out to everyone who wants one. And a lot of first parties, while not cross-gen in reality, can still essentially act as such. I'm keeping the holiday window open for next year, but 2025 feels like a better bet. Small maybe for 2026. I think 2025 is largely what I'm feeling right now. What is the next system though? The next Switch? Something completely different? Coldest prediction on the planet when I say the next system will probably be a continuation of the Switch, meaning basically a more powerful version of the Switch. Switch 2 essentially. But for argument's sake, let's address this system from here on out as the Super Nintendo Switch, aka the Super Switch. Basically what the SNES was to NES, the 3DS to the DS, the Wii U to the Wii, the PS5 to PS4, PS4 to PS3, so on and so on. I think the Switch's successor will be a more powerful take on it, like previous successors were. Another comparison, Apple with their iPhones and how it's basically the same phone as before, just prettier, better performance, battery life, etc. The Super Switch will at the bare minimum have hardware as strong as the PS4 and Xbox One, whereas the Switch's hardware, much like the Wii U's, were along the PS3 and 360's level of hardware power. That's already heavily rumored, but even if that's the bare minimum, the jump between those systems and the PS5 and Xbox Series X, let's be honest, was not that big of a jump the PS4 and One were to the PS3 and 360 and the generations before it. That's just par for the course with Nintendo, unfortunately. They always prioritized innovating hardware and software. Software especially, just making it more fun and creative, the games. They never put graphics and hardware strength at the forefront of their priorities. PS4 and Xbox One levels are still worth something. The Switch now is literally just a portable PS3, basically hardware-wise, 2 console generations ago. So if PS4 and Xbox One is at least one, that's not saying much, but like it's something. But the next system really needs to benefit from that bump in hardware, because one primary buff it could use is hardware that can handle better performance. Better graphics for sure, but performance above all else, at least in my opinion. So many Switch games, optimized or not, struggle in areas for games not running past 30 frames, some managing with only 30 but also sacrificing visual quality with doing so, especially in dock mode too. Not too many first parties struggle with this. Most Mario games, Smash, Zelda in most areas, kind of, etc. they can manage, but some others do regardless, and especially some third-party ports and games. The hardware basically is the biggest thing holding the Switch back currently, with performance issues from small to significant, and that really should be the focus for the next system, just make it considerably stronger. I say that because with what the Switch does and how it's designed, I feel like it gives Nintendo the opportunity to iterate on the Switch less in trying to think of crazy gimmicks or wild ideas like motion control, a Fisher-Price gamepad, 3D without glasses, etc., and iterate more in just taking the formula or concept that works, build upon it from there, and just make it better and more efficient. Yeah, I want the next system to be a stronger take on the Switch because I love the Switch, but not only what I just said, and not only are just so many of these games they recently announced and tons already on the thing, and especially with how much they're investing into their online system as well, I can't imagine the next system not being another Switch. But they also would be super insane to backpedal in a different direction from the Switch too. Nintendo cultivated an entirely new market with the Switch. How convenient and sleek it is, the idea of portable console gaming, topped with the hundreds of incredible games and exclusive on there. Why in God's name would Nintendo abandon that? The Wii struck mostly with casual gamers, but the Switch's appeal not only is far more sustainable, has a wider reach appealing to both casual and hardcore gamers than the motion control stuff, and has so much more substance and infrastructure poured into both its first parties and online service the more it continues. It's put Nintendo in such a unique position with how wildly successful the Switch is in a myriad of ways beyond sales, only lagging behind the DS and PS2 in sales. The vast number of games on this system, and the Switch's online system with cloud saves, all the legacy content especially, leave it way too valuable to just start from scratch. With the Switch having so many Wii U ports between Mario Kart 8, Mario 3D World, Pokken Tournament, Wonderful 101, Bayonetta 1 and 2, Hyrule Warriors, etc., and so many other third-party ports like Batman Arkham Trilogy or Portal and whatnot, they could get away with that because hardly anyone bought the Wii U. It was an insane failure of a system. The Switch is obviously the voluminous polar opposite of that. You risk so much good faith and support, ditching both the NSO model and all the games the Switch fostered much stronger, bigger fan bases for than most of their predecessors managed to do. Because of all of this reasoning, not only do I think they'll stick with the model the current Switch has, just mainly beefing the technology under the thing, but it'll also be backwards compatible with current Switch games. This is also supported by the recent news that Shintaro Furukawa, Tephra, president of Nintendo, basically confirmed the Nintendo account on Switch will also be used for the next system, and how he wants the transition to the next system to be as smooth as possible while utilizing Nintendo accounts as well. Save data on games on the Switch is directly tied to your Nintendo account. You have a fully completed file on Super Mario Odyssey, all 880 moons, sign in on a different system from your own, that save data with the completed file carries over. Between that and Furukawa wanting to make the transition between systems smooth, I'm pretty sure that Soft confirms backwards compatibility, which is a very good thing. Pro-consumer, but backwards compatibility is such a huge thing the next console really should have. Like I said earlier, between the vast slew of the Switch's incredible games, the dozens of millions of people that bought the thing, and the infrastructure to their online, mainly with the classic games, even just solely the incredible first-party lineup on Switch alone, it'd be an unbelievably humongous blunder. Horrific scenario if Nintendo made all these people either potentially repurchase the stuff again and redo all of what the Switch was trying to do, or even to just cut the legs of Mario Wonder, Metal Gear Solid, and so many of these millions of games that people adore that are the reason they use this thing. Imagine how we now have Personas 3 through 5, every Final Fantasy from 1 to 12, the Metal Gear Solid games soon, the Xenoblade games, basically every Mega Man, and so many other examples first and third party. And they just cut away from all of that. You can't do that. I can't describe how bad it'd be if we got no backwards compatibility next system. No one bought the Wii U, they could get away with all of those ports because of that. Mario Kart 8 and the other games were basically brand new for the majority of buyers on Switch. They can't do that for the next system for the most part, when the Switch is so huge. So good on Nintendo for re-embracing backwards compatibility with this, assuming it's true. I basically think it's true. To add to that, I think there's a decent chance as well, going back to the iPhone comparison, that the Super Switch will also allow some of these games to be outputted with better performance. Like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, for example, on Switch now, basically runs at 900p docked, 720p portable, and they run at 30 frames for both. I think Nintendo's also going to allow some developers of some of these games, not all of them, but some to be able to be outputted with better performance thanks to the upgrade in hardware. So either Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom can still run 900 docked, 720 portable, and 30 frames per second on the new Switch, or it can also get beefed up to 1080 docked, 900 portable, and 60 frames or something. I use Zelda as an example. I don't think Zelda's going to get that frame boost or anything like that, maybe the resolution buff if we're lucky, but I think the next system will basically allow developers to update games with this kind of upgrade in mind without having to shell out another $60 port of these games, which this also can serve as another incentive to the next system, assuming backwards compatibility is also a thing. Also, it's gotta have more storage space. I would pray at the bare minimum either 128 or 250 gigabytes, somewhere around there. Nintendo are legit the only company these days that care about optimizing storage size for their games. For their games specifically, and ironically, because console-wise, they're still ludicrously far behind in space for their systems in particular. If you have a Switch, you're literally forced to get a microSD card for more space. Even when Nintendo manages to optimize game storage space, Zelda, Smash, Xenoblade, Mario, etc., ranging from half a dozen to either about or a little more than a dozen gigs, the next system cannot get by on 32 gigs. We're sick of the 32. Every other platformer has had vastly more storage space for a couple generations now. Because of the CDs, I get that, because the whole cartridge production thing is expensive. But these games take up space and stack up really fast. Like the 32 gigs, like if you have Zelda, Smash, and Xenoblade, you're already set. You gotta go out and get a microSD card. The drawback on the other systems being like games like Mortal Kombat 1 or Street Fighter 6 and other games. So a lot of these games, Final Fantasy, they take up like 40 gigs, 60 gigs, 80, even 100 on some of these recent games. It's ridiculous. The Super Switch should have stronger hardware, more storage space, and backwards compatibility with all the games that the original Switch has. Better battery life could be useful too. The OLED lasts from 4.5 to 9 hours. That as a base benchmark could be solid, but obviously the more battery life the better. 6 to 12 hours I think would be the ideal sweet spot if they can manage that. Slowly but surely, Nintendo's online legacy content is becoming worth having now, fostering NES, SNES, Game Boy Advance, Genesis, and N64 games on there. Only just wish they pumped them out at a faster rate than what they've been doing for literal years. So freaking slowly every month or two, with just 1 or 2 games per system in that time frame. It's possible we might get more expanded systems, like maybe depends on the system. Like I use DS as an example, but it's like dual screen and touch controls. I don't know how they can manage that. but them just continuing to expand on N64 and Game Boy Advance at the very least for now. Hopefully we get some of the Pokemon games with those down the road. GameCube games I have doubts for, mainly regarding recent remasters and remakes Nintendo keeps pumping out, but that'll be saved for another video. Also, please make the connection and online quality good. Make online play good. Please buff your clients, your providers, anything that'll make the online significantly improved from most of their online titles. More themes than just black and white. The 3DS had a myriad of themes. Why has the Switch been stuck with only 2 basic black and white themes the entire lifespan? There's gotta be more themes with the Super Switch, with the latter half of these predictions and hopes being either cosmetic or minor in the grand scheme. Other than all of this, there isn't much else that I want from the Super Switch that the Switch already does. The concept is golden, the controllers, design, game, Joy-Con drift, I almost forgot Joy-Con drift. Fix your Nintendo! You've had really good controllers that didn't drift or have this many issues this quick, this fast. Fix your Joy-Con drift, please. Please stop making us pay almost $100 to get new controllers every couple months. Other than that, the concept's golden, the controllers mostly, design, games, etc. Like, the Switch is already such a strong and solid system behind it. All Nintendo really has to do, I literally forgot Joy-Con drift throughout making this script, but ignoring that, all they really have to do for the next system is buff up the hardware, performance, and storage space above all else. The Super Switch essentially managing to provide what the Switch is capable of, but both better and more efficiently. So that envisions what I believe the next system could be and when, but what games in the foreseeable future as far as launch and the first year could come to really bolster and drive home more Super Switch supporters? If the Switch taught us anything at all, it's that software throughout the first entire year is a fantastic way to make bank out of your system. Switch first year launched with 3D Zelda, and it had Mario Kart 8 a month later, a new Splatoon, new IP with ARMS, Mario Odyssey, Mario plus Rabbids, Fire Emblem Warriors, Xenoblade 2, just non-stop software, basically one big game almost every month that entire first year. 2017, for tons of people, is either one of the best or the best year for the Switch in their eyes, just from the games that were lined up. So they kind of have to do something similar with the new system. I do got a launch title, but obviously there's a bunch to speculate as far as all the other franchises. 2025 is a semi-specific window I expect the Super Switch to come, because that year is Mario's 40th anniversary. All logic points to the launch title for the next system being a 3D Mario game. We just got a brand new 3D Zelda, a new Pokemon came out last year with DLC this year, a new Splatoon came out last year with DLC this year, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is still getting DLC pumped into the end of this year, we're getting a whole new 2D Mario in a couple months. The only other potential candidates for a launch title that could push systems hard in the first year, if not off the bat, are either Animal Crossing, which could happen given New Horizons DLC stopped a pretty good while ago, and a very specific iteration of Smash. Those two, and a 3D Mario, maybe one more, we'll talk about later, are the only other potential candidates at this moment from my eyes for early Super Switch titles, and 3D Mario is the only one that really feels like it's being held back strategically for a while. Despite the vast number of 2017 Switch games getting sequels on the same hardware years later, just like how Zelda and Mario did such back on the Wii, it really feels like Nintendo's been keeping 3D Mario in reserves for much longer, likely for their next system. Bowser's Fury came out in 2021, we all feel they're holding 3D Mario back on purpose. Though that part saddens me more though. I've been gunning for Odyssey 2 on the Switch since basically 2018, 2019, and in a world where Zelda gets 2 big 3D games on the same system again, whereas Mario gets 1.5, I'm basically throwing in the towel for Odyssey 2 on Switch. On the next system, especially with Mario's 40th anniversary in 2 years, that feels much more likely and much more strategic. I basically admit defeat, but you can't deny it still made a lot of sense regardless of it not happening. Every system barring the Wii U got a very different 3D Mario per system. Only 3D World carrying the style and structure 3D Land had, but I feel like the next 3D Mario on the next system could very well be a sequel to Odyssey still, just because of how huge Odyssey was, especially by 3D Mario standards, doubling in sales from 64 and Galaxy, the 2 most popular 3D games for a while, tons adoring Odyssey, and especially when Odyssey pulling in Galaxy 2 still made a lot of sense with so many other games early in the Switch's life doing such for their series. Who's to say they're not potentially holding an Odyssey sequel in reserve to make the next system sell? And I feel like an Odyssey sequel would have to be an exclusive for the next system, rather than cross-gen, just to get people on board the next system. It all makes sense. It could very well be an entirely new style and focus. Bowser's Fury experimented with the formula in a more condensed, but distinct fashion from other 3D games, so very well it could be a 3D Mario carrying that torch, maybe an Odyssey sequel that's combining both elements and structure from Odyssey and Bowser's Fury, or something completely entirely different from both those games. There's a lot of ways 3D Mario can go, but continuing Odyssey's framework with a sequel for the next system already gives the majority of those who got the original game inherent desire to jump aboard the sequel. Either way, there's a strong chance we could be seeing a new Nintendo system debut with a 3D Mario at launch again, and I'm on board with that idea, regardless of what the 3D Mario could be. Animal Crossing, again, has been sitting for a while, and New Horizons was a monumental success for both the series and Nintendo. Nintendo pumping out a new Animal Crossing within the first year or two for the next system also sounds like a sound idea that could be a huge push for the Super Switch. I say maybe one more other launch/first year big game alongside Mario, Animal Crossing, and Smash. I'm really torn on Mario Kart. It's kind of funny when people are saying, oh, we're never gonna get a new Mario Kart again, assuming backwards compatibility thing is true, because of how much they keep putting in 8 and it being likely playable on the next system. I get how annoying that is. The same Mario Kart from 2 Nintendo systems ago, still being the primary Mario Kart over a decade later. Annoying, sure, we know that's not what's gonna happen. Mario Kart 8 last being a new entry was 2014. Almost an entire decade did Nintendo sit on ideas and a roadmap of sorts of what else Mario Kart could do. I can see them hold out another year or two, but I can also see Nintendo having another Mario Kart ready, because even with the DLC, which is largely repurposed content from an already existing Mario Kart, which in of itself is already another Mario Kart that repurposes a lot of elements, assets, if not just remaking older courses and ideas with less powerful tech under it, for 2 years they sat on Mario Kart. Nintendo said make an enhanced port, add some new characters, fix battle mode, but that wasn't a lot. 5 years later, they decide to just pump out more tracks and add a couple more characters halfway into the DLC. Even with Mario Kart Tour, Nintendo still had a lot of time to consider what to do for their next Mario Kart, since Wii U and since 8 Deluxe came out in 2017 anyways. There is no way there's no roadmap for Mario Kart moving forward, and tinfoil hat with this one, I don't think it's that far out of the realm of possibility to think Mario Kart 9 or 10, depending on who you are, if you care about Tour being 9 or not. The next new Mario Kart was just sitting in Nintendo's hands for a while. They had it essentially ready for all we know, and they settled with 8 Deluxe because that game was making bank like no tomorrow. Especially for Mario Kart, because the 5-year gap between release and the BCP is staggering when Mario Karts usually release 3 years apart from each other, albeit when most of the series was developed between consoles and handhelds, and when most of this DLC is just reused content from a different game put onto a console. The main issue the Mario Kart team would have to come up with is either trying to top or distance themselves from Mario Kart 8. Because by the time the DLC ends, the character roster is the largest and one of, if not the best rosters, discounting Mario Kart Tour. The track roster especially is the biggest in the entire series, almost 100 tracks, a lot of them being mad good ones too. Like, I don't think we're gonna be stuck with 8 Deluxe forever, but Mario Kart's kind of in the same boat Smash is in that track roster's probably gonna decrease from how massive it's gotten. Like, the 8 new cups, 16 nitro tracks, 16 retro tracks. Here's a modest and solid character roster. Here's a battle mode. Here's online. Go nuts. Like, I don't think they could get by with that anymore after 8 Deluxe. Not after a 96 track Mario Kart with like 48 playable characters to choose from. I don't think they have to match 8 Deluxe as it is by December 2023. Mario Kart sells amongst casuals like flapjacks at Denny's no matter what, but I don't think they could get by with the whole 4 new cups, 4 retro cups, battle mode online, done and done. Especially for hardcore fans, you know? Like a single player focused campaign of some kind at the very least, maybe. They're gonna have to hit both casuals and hardcore fans of Mario Kart to sell at the highest they can, but I don't know if Mario Kart's older formula from DS onwards is sustainable or sufficient in this age after 8 Deluxe. They're gonna have to pull something creative or crazy out of their ass with a new Mario Kart. It'd either have to revamp Mario Kart considerably, or do something different from 8, or be a Smash Kart, Nintendo Kart or whatever, or just do more than 8, which that's hard enough to imagine already. It'd be tough, but I think we're likely to get another Mario Kart, a new one, It's just a toss-up whether they got one on the ready in the glass case just in case for this occasion because of how much time they had between now and when 8 finished in 2014-2015, or if touring the Booster Course Pass genuinely took up enough time and manpower that they couldn't get a new Mario Kart prepared. I might make this its own video, pondering again what direction Mario Kart can go for the next system. If we don't get it in that first year, I'm not going to be that surprised, but if Nintendo somehow has a new Mario Kart alongside 3D Mario in that first year, it's such a wrap for the next system. That's a deadly combo and guarantee way to make that first year better than the Switches. Smash, on the other hand, I can see us getting within the first year if it's an enhanced port of Ultimate. People would be annoyed if we were stuck with Mario Kart 8, potentially releasing 3 times in a row per console. Far less would be annoyed if it was Smash Ultimate, purely just from the character roster alone. The next time we get a brand new Smash game, we're gonna have to deal with a much smaller character and stage roster. Maybe a focus on deeper single player content again, but Nintendo could pull a Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with Smash Ultimate and get away with it. We're never going to get a Smash game like Ultimate again, and the majority of people who like Smash would be on board with doing Ultimate again and just expanding on the roster from there. Even with Mario Kart 8 selling well on a failing system like the Wii U, Smash Ultimate can 100% reap a similar effect with an enhanced port if they pre-packaged all the DLC into it, poured extra characters onto it, bring back more old stages not brought back like Pac-Maze or Rainbow Road, introduce new stages for Kirby, Pokemon, Metroid, Donkey Kong, Mario, Zelda, Xenoblade, Splatoon, etc. Pour more focus on the single player content, whether Target Test makes a comeback, World of Light gets more expansion or cutscenes, they add a new single player mode altogether to differentiate from World of Light / the original game, a boss rush mode, etc. I do think they can do most if not all of that with Smash, but at the very least, more new characters, Dixie Kong, Bandana D, Noah, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Master Chief, Geno has a shot again after the RPG remake, Rayman, Dr. Eggman, Shadow, Zero, 2B, if they and Sony ever wanted to, some Sony character, if that's ever in the cards. You can't deny that's one of the few other Insano-style newcomers that could ever do that isn't a non-game character like Goku. Doomslayer, Skull Kid, Paper Mario, Aleer, a Gen 8 or Gen 9 Pokemon, you and I know there's still plenty of ideas and potential in store for more newcomers for Smash, whether we get a new game or they expand on Ultimate in a DX or Deluxe port. A port of Smash Ultimate, I think, is in the cards for Nintendo, and plenty would still ride with Smash Ultimate, just making it even more Ultimate than it already is, because there's always room to grow still, in my opinion. If they're going full reset, rebooting the series, on the other hand, much smaller roster, maybe more story focused, more single player content, but a much more condensed roster in general with condensed stages, music, items and whatnot, I think we're going to see that much later. The reboot road's a road Smash will have to take, but if Nintendo takes that route, I feel that'll come 2 to 3 years down the road for the next system. Because a Smash reboot or restructure, even beyond just revamping every veteran, would need something pretty significant, I feel, to separate from what Smash is currently. That's possible, but I think the enhanced port angle's more likely, just looking at Ultimate's entire goal and current roster of characters. I do think there's a chance we could get a new Pokemon game. Gen 10's probably on the roadmap, but unless Game Freak and Pokemon Company want to rush it out there around the first year, I don't see a new Pokemon game coming until either the second or third year, unless they pull a Let's Go and make a Let's Go Johto games for the first or second year instead. Either that or potential remakes or continuation of the Shadow Pokemon games maybe. Maybe they keep going with the whole Legends idea for the first year. Otherwise, Pokemon might be a little bit once we get the next system. Something far more than just a little though, 3D Zelda definitely is. We could get a remake or top-down Zelda again within the first, second, or third year, leaning more towards second or third. That's probably possible just to hold Zelda fans over. Maybe a remaster of Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, or both again. That's been asked for practically the entirety of the Switch's life. If they remade Ocarina of Time from the ground up, that'd be a really cool remake and holdover, but I don't think the next new 3D Zelda's coming for a really good while. We literally just got one. So yeah. I'm gonna go with that bold idea, however, and predict within the first or second year of the system, Nintendo's gonna fully remake Zelda Ocarina of Time from the ground up. Full HD, gorgeous remade assets as a holdover for longtime Zelda fans, while also both introducing a new generation to Ocarina of Time, as well as tickling nostalgia bones for fans of the original or 3DS remake. Ocarina of Time could probably get a remake in this day and age where Nintendo's pumping out a lot more remasters and remakes as of late. Again, video for another day, but Ocarina of Time HD remake, how sick would that be? 2D Mario is probably in the same boat since Wonder's coming out in a couple months, and Splatoon as well since 3 came out last holiday, but as far as the big, massive system seller first parties, 3D Mario's likely a given at launch, with Animal Crossing and a port of Smash Ultimate having a fair shot in the cards within the first or second year of the thing. Mario Kart feeling like a coin toss to whether they got one ready for a while now, or if the mobile one and recent DLC was that time consuming and important to not have a new one ready for the next 2 or 3 years or so. Pokemon probably coming a little later, 1 to 2 years unless it's a remake or another Legends type game, alongside either a top-down, remastered, or remade Zelda around that time frame as well. Remastered or remade a little sooner. And 2D Mario, 3D Zelda, and Splatoon likely coming considerably later from launch. But as far as other first parties that could secure the rest of the first year of the system to make for a solid and great first year that are accompanied by at least a 3D Mario, Fire Emblem I think is almost a given. Three Houses was 2019, DLC a year after, and not even a whole 3 years later, from that we got Engage. Intelligent Systems and Nintendo love their Fire Emblem, so I wouldn't be shocked if we got either a new Fire Emblem game entirely, or a remake of a past title, Genealogy the Holy War, Path of Radiance, Rainy at Dawn, Thracia 776, something like those, early on in the next system's life. Relatively safe bet. Metroid though, this one's kinda something. I think Prime 4 is going to be a cross-gen title. Metroid Prime 4 will have a decent chance of coming out on both the current Switch and the Super Switch, a potential display of power, output, performance, etc. from the latter, if 3D Mario's not doing that. Prime 4 has been in total development hell for the longest time, and we're closer to the end of the Switch compared to the beginning, on top of how highly Nintendo considers Prime 4, and even Metroid in the grand scheme, between Dread, the sudden drop of the Prime 1 remaster, etc. Prime 4's gotta come at some point. It's still coming to Switch, can still happen. I think that's still probably gonna be the case, but I think it could come to both systems because so much time has passed, whether you factor the 2017 reveal or the 2019 announcement of the game restarting development. 4 years from this video. Everyone knows we're due for something regarding Prime 4, and it being another highly anticipated title used to push sales for the next system could be a probable outcome. Running it back to Mario, there's always the chance of multiple Mario games coming out within the first year of the new system. The Wii got 3, the Switch got 2, 3 if you add Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and I don't think a new 3D Mario could be all we get Mario-wise. We're running up on year 3 since Paper Mario The Origami King came out. The average span between Paper Mario titles is usually 4 years, with Super being 3, Sticker Star being 5, but I can see Nintendo and Intelligent Systems hold off on the next Paper Mario for the Super Switch, especially if it winds up being more character-driven / character original, and more RPG-focused like tons of fans have been wanting for a while. Even if not, Paper Mario's a given in the near future, and saving it for the next system makes sense. What makes more sense than that? Mario Party. Superstars came in 2021, we're almost 2 years out since that came out. Mario Party is another system seller. Superstars and Super Mario Party sold unbelievably well. Insanely well. Mario Party is insanely popular. 3 to 4 years is another usual average between console mainline Mario Parties, especially since 9, and whether a completely new or another glorified remake best of collection like Superstars, which is still very good, a new Mario Party would be another way to drive a new Nintendo system. Also, once we get a new Dr. Mario game, that heavily implies how close we are to this next system. I wouldn't be too shocked if HAL Laboratories got another Kirby game in the works as well. When they started teasing Forgotten Land, it was 2 years out from releasing. I wouldn't be that shocked if it was around 3 to 4 years since the start of development until releasing that, and with how monstrously successful for Kirby Forgotten Land was. It's probably safe to assume the next game will be another 3D venture like Forgotten Land. That's definitely a worthwhile first party and reasonable expectation within the first year, if not the second. Same for Yoshi. Good Feel's been kind of silent alongside Crafted World coming out in 2019. We usually get a Yoshi game at least once per system. It's been 4 years since the last one. They're probably going to pump out a Yoshi game in the first or second year. And fun fact, the ARMS development team and the Mario Kart team consist of a lot of the same people. And between the end of Mario Kart 8's DLC on Wii U to ARMS' release was only 2 years apart from each other, so I wouldn't be that surprised if they started working on a sequel to ARMS once the Booster Course Pass ends. Or even before that, honestly. That could also be a second-year title since that wraps up only in more or less 5 months from now, but again, I could see them working on it before that, and ARMS still sold well More than 2.5 million, a brand new Nintendo IP. That's both better than half of Nintendo's current first-party sales numbers on average, and usually warrants another installment. The gameplay's not everyone's cup of tea, and they could probably expand on it and add more types of arms, but the main thing that'll sell more people on arms is if they expand on the characters in world. People love the designs and a lot of the characters in their backgrounds. Min Min, Twintelle, Kid Cobra, Helix, Bite and Bark, Ribbon Girl, Dr. Coil, even Springman. This could be a type of equivalent to Tekken or Street Fighter for Nintendo, in that this could be their main fighting game series that can continuously expand on their characters and worlds like those series and make the characters and story more interesting than what the original game led on. It's bound to happen. I think an ARMS sequel's inevitable. Look man, I need a new Donkey Kong. I don't care anymore whether it's 2D or 3D, but it's always so hard to imagine whether Nintendo cares about Donkey Kong or not, whether or not Donkey Kong's on their minds. They always use him and a few other Donkey Kong characters, maybe, for every Mario spin-off that comes our way. We have not seen a new Donkey Kong game since almost an entire decade ago. Do I think there's something in the pipeline for the next system for Donkey Kong? I don't know. But Donkey Kong deserved a new installment half a decade ago. Because Tropical Freeze came out on Switch and that was a port, I feel like they have to think of something new for the series. There's gotta be a new DK game coming. They can't skip a system for DK. I feel like that'd be kind of criminal. Remakes and remasters on the other hand, I know I've got another video talking about this coming soon, but Nintendo's been on sort of a spree of remasters or remakes lately, with remastering Metroid Prime 1, Pikmin 1 and 2, shadow dropping all 3 of these games as soon as they were announced, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon getting remastered and coming next year, Super Mario RPG getting remade, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe being a remake of the Wii game, Advance Wars 1 and 2 Rebo Camp, 2 Famicom Detective Club games, etc. I don't think it's stopping there. I think the Switch we have now will get remasters of Prime 2 and 3, and the Prime Trilogy will get a collection resale before Prime 4. I think the way Nintendo went about remastering and announcing Prime 1 has a solid chance of being a strong indicator they're going to keep that up for other Metroid Prime games. But for other series, Sakurai has expressed this 3 times on his channel now, how cool an HD remaster of this game would be. It's one of the most requested remaster/re-releases. Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon getting one opens the door for so many other 3DS games getting one as well. The big one, Kid Icarus Uprising. If not sooner, I think the Super Switch is the one. If not on Switch, the Super Switch unironically, actually, genuinely, I think it's the one. Cross-gen's debatable, especially for how niche Kid Icarus is, but I think for either system, we're actually gonna get a remaster for Uprising. It keeps getting asked for, it's not stopping. The time has come. Tons unironically want Kid Icarus a second chance at life on some system that has a lot more users on it than the 3DS. Either or would present it another opportunity to catch on to a wider audience and show Nintendo Kid Icarus has potential to grow both as a franchise and amass a bigger audience and following than it has now. Oh, but what team would be able to remaster? Give it to Grezzo! Give it to Bandai Namco! Grezzo, Bandai Namco, either studio would kill it at remastering or remodeling Kid Icarus Uprising to console. Grezzo has the track record, Bandai Namco's also a competent studio that has worked with Sakurai on 2 Smash games in a row now. Either one can make it work fabulously. I think the time is getting close. Another big one, this one's kind of out there, Earthbound. Completely redone assets, completely new, HD, remade from the ground up, full 3D models, orchestrated soundtrack. If Nintendo wanted to reach into their pockets for a classic game that could score big from a remake, Earthbound's one of them. If not Earthbound, I think Punch-Out Wii getting remade in full HD is another big one. Punch-Out's another cult classic and game that is easy pickings for a remake. I don't think both of them would get remade, but either one, they definitely could. This one's kind of bit. The Xenoblade Chronicles franchise just wrapped up its trilogy with 3, but I think because of how much the franchise has grown and how the Switch has all 3 games, including either the extra content or actual DLC for them, I think we could see a Xenoblade Chronicles trilogy collection come to the Super Switch. Xenoblade's essentially in a similar boat Fire Emblem was around Awakening. It's growing pretty substantially out of its niche territory. That I think could happen. But I also don't think Nintendo's done with Xenoblade either, the whole franchise, especially with how each subsequent game, the series gets more and more popular. Whether Warriors themed or another main entry or another spin-off like X, I think give it a couple of years, maybe even just 1 or 2 years, Nintendo and Monolith still have plans for Xenoblade. Some of these predictions could be changed based on what's announced in the coming year or two for the Switch we have now. Again, this entire thing's pure speculation, but at the bare minimum, a 3D Mario, either a Paper Mario, a Mario Party, or both, a Fire Emblem, a Metroid game, an ARMS sequel, a potential Yoshi game and or potential Kirby game, and 1 or more remakes/remasters of other Nintendo titles already makes for a strong first year, but so much could happen and we're still likely a year or 2 out from knowing anything about the next Nintendo system. The one thing I think everyone thinking about the idea, not just those watching this video, could probably agree with me on is a 3D Mario's coming. And while that makes for a good incentive to pick up the system, there's still tons of other first parties that can either join it or fill out the rest of the year instead. For prediction's sake, I'm gonna say 3D Mario at launch, it's a lock, and either around the first couple months or throughout the first year. We're gonna get a new Paper Mario, a new Mario Party, Metroid Prime 4 cross-gen release, a Fire Emblem, whether new or remake, a new Kirby, a new Yoshi, Zelda Ocarina of Time HD remake, a Xenoblade Chronicles HD Trilogy Collection, Smash Ultimate Enhanced Core guaranteeing more characters, Kid Icarus Uprising HD, finally, and an ARMS sequel. If even half of these wound up the case, I think a lot of us can agree. Half of that, at least, that's a pretty strong first year. But we'll know that software lineup soon enough. I'm still iffy on Mario Kart. Again, I might make that another video talking about that. 3D Mario, I think we can all agree is a lock though. That's essentially the main structure or details regarding the next Nintendo system I can predict at this current moment in time. Time slowly ticks, as to me anyways, we're roughly 18 months to 2 years out from this system. For us to know for sure, but we'll know soon enough. Let me know your thoughts down in those comments, the release window, the system itself, what games could we see at launch, the first year, the first 2 or 3 years, etc. Thank you very much for watching. Time to go back to the drawing board for more Mario and Nintendo related content. Stay super.
Yo, hey, 妹妹，嘿，我来呀！共和大哈哈呀！拉面，嘿，来面，来个面，共和再见呀！哈哈，拉面，下手面，谢谢。